Hello and welcome back to my channel. This week we are doing all things soup. We are cooking a vegetable beef soup, a chicken noodle soup, and a loaded baked potato soup. So stay tuned. This is all things Mandy. So for tonight's soup meal, I'm going to take some mixed vegetables, some of the tomatoes that I canned this summer, onion. This is a pound of ground beef from that butcher box haul that I did. And then I have 1 cup of macaroni noodles and some vegetable juice. I'm gonna take this and make some vegetable beef soup. So stay tuned. All right, so the first thing I've done is dice my onions, and now I have my Instant Pot sauteing on the saute function. I'm browning up my ground beef, and as soon as I get that browned, I'm going to drain off any excess fat and add in my onions and some salt and pepper. All right, so my meat has sauteed up. I just added my onion. I'm gonna keep this on that saute function just long enough for those onions to get soft. I am gonna add some salt, some pepper, and I didn't mention it earlier, I'm gonna add some garlic. So I have this squeezed garlic. I'm gonna put about a couple little dollops. I'm gonna stir that around. Starting to smell so good. So now I'm gonna start getting prepared to add my other ingredients. So let's get our cans opened and we'll get this soup assembled. All right, so my onions are looking soft. So I'm gonna leave it on the saute mode while I add in all my other things, and then we'll turn it to pressurize once I get all my ingredients. So I have 1 large can. This is a 29-ounce can of veg oil. I drained the liquid. I don't really like the liquid that comes in canned vegetables, so I always drain that off. I'm gonna add 1 pint jar of the tomatoes that I canned this summer. Give that a stir. Okay. Now at this point, I'm going to put more salt and pepper. Give it another stir. All right, here's the good part. Okay, so I have 1 cup of macaroni noodles. Dry, not cooked. Now with this soup, you don't have to put the pasta in. You don't have to use macaroni. You could use ditalini, you could use whatever, or you don't have to use pasta at all. If you didn't want to put the ground beef in, you could leave it out and just do a vegetable soup. If you wanted to do ground pork, ground turkey, whatever. So this soup is very versatile. But I'm gonna take this 1 cup of macaroni noodles, get that in there. And in the Instant Pot, when you cook pasta, you need to make sure there's enough liquid to cover the pasta, because we know pasta grows. And this is easier when it's a soup because you want it real liquidy. Now what I'm gonna do is take this 100% vegetable juice, and I'm gonna just add that in. I'm gonna put about half the bottle, give it a stir, see what I'm thinking, because I do want this to come out more like a soup. I don't want it to be like just a thick pasta dish. So that looks pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and put the rest of this juice in here. Okay. So that was the whole bottle. I did not even make it to the fill line, the max line here. So give that a stir. And now we're ready to do the saute function, or turn off the saute function and get it ready to pressurize. So I've got my lid on, made sure my pressure spout here was turned on. I'm gonna hit cancel to stop the saute. I'm gonna go to soup, and it automatically sets it to 30 minutes. And we'll see what happens. All right, 30 minutes. Stay tuned. So it's been 30 minutes, and this is my soup. And I have now plated up a bowl and added some cheese, and you can just see the yummy goodness of the noodles, the cheese, and the soup. This was delicious. I definitely recommend that you try this vegetable beef soup. Hello friends. So the soup that we're going to make tonight is actually going to cook all day here in my crock pot. I'm going to make a homemade chicken noodle soup. I found a recipe on Pinterest that used a lot of fresh herbs, so I'm interested to try that. So I've got this poultry blend, fresh herbs that I got in the produce section of my grocery store. It's rosemary, sage, and thyme. So we're gonna try that. I've got an onion, 2 really large carrots. I'm gonna cut up some celery. That's gonna be the veggies that I'm gonna put in there. I've got some chicken I've pulled out of my freezer. I've got this dark meat that I had frozen. It's already been cooked. It was frozen, so I've defrosted that. 1 chicken breast here that had already been shredded, and it was in my freezer, so I got that out. And then we're gonna use 2 32-ounce cartons of chicken broth, and then we're gonna finish it up with these egg noodles. So we're making soup tonight in the crock pot. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do here is prep my veggies. I've peeled my carrots. My celery has already been prepped. I'm gonna chop up this onion, and so I'm gonna get to chopping on my vegetables, and then we'll come back and put our soup together. All right, so I've got all my veggies prepped here and cut into large chunks. I'm gonna use my chopper so I can get the smaller dice on them. It is a soup, I don't want big chunks in there. And I also wanted to show you something that I do to try to cut back on waste in my kitchen. So whenever I'm cutting up carrots or onions or celery, I pick the ends that I trim off. I put them in this bag and keep them in my freezer. And then when I go to cook up a chicken or turkey, I will throw this into the pot with the water, and then it will make a nice flavorful broth that I can use as my chicken stock. And so then once I get the chicken out, I will strain the broth, and then I can freeze it or use it immediately. So that's a tip for a zero waste kitchen. So keep all those bags going in your freezer. So I'm gonna start with my veggies here. And I'm just gonna put them here on my nifty little chopper. And I'm gonna be just chopping away. And I'm gonna go ahead and do my carrots, my celery, everything in the same container, because then all my veggies then fall to the bottom, and so it'll be easy to transfer to my crock pot. So I'm just gonna keep chopping up these veggies, and then we'll come back and get everything assembled. All right, so here we go. I've got all of my carrots, onions, and celery diced up. So I'm gonna put that in my crock pot. Sure to get all the goodness in there. So I used 1 onion. I used 2 very large carrots. The recipe called for 3 medium carrots, but I just used 2 because mine were pretty large. And then 3 stalks of celery, so I've got that. Also calls for a clove of garlic. I'm going to use this minced garlic. I keep this in my fridge. There we go. Then I'm going to put in my chicken thighs that I got out of the freezer and I thawed, and I've been chopping those up into chunks. it will fall apart. It's already cooked. Once we get it in the soup and the crock pot on, it'll start falling apart. But I did want it to get it into smaller pieces before I put it into crock pot, so that's what I'm doing here. A time saver that I like to use a lot is if I'm cooking something and I have more chicken in the package or beef in the package that I want or need for the recipe, I'll go ahead and cook it all. And then I will put what I don't need for that particular recipe in the freezer. And then that way, the next time I need that, it will be ready to go. So there's my chicken. And then it says to put in a sprig of rosemary. We're gonna be fishing this out before we eat. A sprig of sage. And then I've got, these are small little sprigs, but I've got about 4 or 5 of these small little sprigs of thyme that I'm gonna put in there. And now we're going to add the chicken broth. We don't add the noodles in until about an hour before we want to serve. So I'm gonna hold on to those noodles. And the recipe said not to salt and pepper until the soup is done. So it said as soon as the soup is done and ready to serve, you're gonna salt and pepper to taste. So I'm gonna do what the recipe says. All right, so I'm adding in my chicken stock. There's one. I'm gonna add the other. And I'm gonna cook this on high. I wouldn't have to work, I mean, the chicken's cooked. I wouldn't have to do it on high, but it is about lunchtime and I want this to be ready for dinner. So I may just cook it on high for like 2 hours just to get it going really well, and then cut it down on low for the last 2 hours. We'll see. You could certainly cook this, if your chicken's not cooked, definitely cook it on low for 6 to 8 hours or on high for 4 hours. If your chicken is cooked, you got a little bit more wiggle room there. All right, so here is my chicken noodle soup. I'm gonna give it a stir to mix, put this on high, and I'll come back when it's time to add the noodles. All right, so it has been several hours and the soup is looking really good. So what I need to do now is fish out these stems of herbs. So there's the rosemary, there's a stem of thyme. Hey, let me use this. That's kind of hot. Let's see, there's another stem of thyme. And the recipe said not to worry if there were little leaves that had fallen off. So here's my stem of sage. And what I had left in that package that I got at the grocery store for this poultry season, there's another stem of thyme. I just put in my bag with all of my little ends to use when I'm making turkey or chicken stock. And so I just put it in there. There's another little stem of thyme. And so I'm just kind of stirring through here and looking and making sure that I've not left any of those stems in there. Oh, I see one right there. See? So each time you see a little stem, you want to get it out. Nobody wants to bite down on a stem, right? So I'm continuing to just kind of stir through and make sure I got all those stems out. Oh, I see one right there. See it? Okay. But back to what I was saying. I don't know if I finished that thought. So I just put the leftover poultry herbs that I got at the grocery store. I didn't want them to go bad, so I just threw them in that bag. Oh, there's another stem. I threw them in that freezer bag where I've got the ends of my celery and onion and carrots that I'm going to use when I'm making chicken stock. And so that way I can have all that good flavor. There's another little stem.
So I'm just going to continue fishing out these stems, and then we're going to add our noodles. Okay, so I think I've gotten all of my herb stems out. I'm going to take this package of medium egg noodles, and it's a 16-ounce package, 1 pound. I'm going to do half. I'm going to do half of the package and add that into my crock pot. Yep, that's about half. And so now I'm just going to give it a stir. Now these noodles are going to expand as they're cooking, so I'm going to keep an eye on this. This is about an hour before I want to actually serve. I'm going to keep my eye on it and make sure I don't need to add more liquid. If I do need to add more liquid, I'm just going to add water. But I don't want this to become something really dry. And so I'm just going to keep stirring. Stirring this and keeping an eye on everything. So yeah, there's my noodles and my chicken noodle soup. So tonight's soup is a potato soup. The recipe called for 6 large russet potatoes. I had 2 large russet potatoes and a handful of baby potatoes. And so I didn't want to go spend more than I had, so I decided just to make it work with what I had on hand. So I washed and peeled the russet potatoes. I sliced them and diced them. And so I'm just sitting here slicing and dicing. I decided that I would just use what I had on hand and make the soup work, because I am a zero-waste kitchen and I want to try to use everything up in my pantry that I can. So this is what I had on hand. And so I'm just going to keep dicing and slicing these potatoes, and then we'll be right back. So now I have sliced and diced my russet potatoes. I also sliced my baby potatoes. I didn't bother peeling those because they were so small. I also diced a small sweet onion, and now I am putting all of the veggies in my crock pot. Next, I'm adding some minced garlic. I have this squeeze bottle of minced garlic that I keep in my fridge. It's getting below the halfway point, so squeezing it is not an easy thing. So I squeeze a little bit out, and then finally I just decided to take the top off and dump a little bit of the minced garlic into my potato soup. After that, I decided to add a very liberal douse of my seasoned salt to the potato soup mixture. I then add my 1 box container of chicken broth to the potato soup. After about 3 hours, I decided to come in and check my potatoes, so I opened up my crock pot. I took my potato masher and started mashing up a little bit of the potatoes. So once my potatoes were slightly mashed, I added in 1 cup of heavy whipping cream. The recipe called for 1 cup, and so I took half of this container, because this container holds 2 cups, and poured that into my potato mixture. Next, I added in some sour cream. The recipe called for 2 cups of sour cream. I didn't have 2 cups of sour cream, but I also improvised on the potatoes, so I felt like it would be okay. I had 2 little bits of sour cream left in 2 separate containers, so I just emptied out those containers because you know me, I'm a zero waste kitchen, so I wanted to use up what I had on hand. So I just took what I had left in those 2 containers and added those to my potato soup. After I felt like that cream and that sour cream was incorporated into my soup, I took a couple handfuls of some shredded cheddar cheese and I mixed that into my soup just to give it a little bit of tang, and so I gave that a stir. Then I felt like I needed to give it a little extra pizzazz, so I added some fresh cracked black pepper on top of the soup and gave it another stir. And here is my delicious, creamy, loaded baked potato soup. So I have everything mixed in. I have a little bit of the cheese. I actually stirred in a little bit of the bacon bits, and this is how I served it. I served it with some shredded cheese, some of the bacon bits, and a little bit of dried parsley on top. This was absolutely delicious. So these were our soups this week: vegetable, beef, macaroni soup, a homemade chicken noodle soup, and an absolutely delicious loaded baked potato soup. If you like this content, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification button. This was All Things Mandy. See you next time. Bye.